When did a gut feeling save your life? Thank you to everyone for the awards, comments and votes. There's so much to this story that I didn't get into, but if you have any questions please ask. I'm a social butterfly and an open book. Went on a date with someone from Tinder. The whole time he's talking about himself. It's nothing but the worst of the worst stories. About him being abusive to his multiple exes but blaming them. Telling me how his daughter hates him. And other horrible stuff that I can't even bring myself to say. While he's talking I'm pretty much having a panic attack. The voice in my head is saying calming GTFO. So I say I have to go to family dinner. He's making every excuse to keep me and for me to go home with him, so I just get in my car and go. We're at a Starbucks outside. He follows me, so I call my mom. She tells me to go over and that she's calling the cops. Luckily she lives in a gated community where a guard is at the booth so he can't follow me in. He turns around and speeds off. The cops get there, I give them all the information I have on this guy. He went into details about his life and I told the cops everything. Turns out this guy kidnapped and brutally attacked a girl and was on the run and was stupid enough to tell me his real name when we met in person. It was a long summer of multiple court dates just to end in him getting a BS sentence. As a teenager in Ireland, one day I got this overwhelming feeling to stay at home from school. Good thing I did, cause my friends called me later that night to say a girl who was bullying me brought her junkie friend onto the school campus, hid in the toilets for most of the day, waiting to beat the crap out of me. My friends weirdly overheard the plan while they were using the toilets at morning break. This was the time before mobile phones were used, so they each called me later that night. Was heading to my car in my building's parking garage. On my way to work, a van was parked next to my car and I could see a man inside. He motioned for me to come around to his door, pointing to something in his car to try to get me to come look. I had a bad feeling, so I just shook my head and got in my car. I look over and he's getting out of the van. I quickly start driving off and notice there's a second man crouched behind a dumpster that was near the van. Not sure what I avoided, but sure as glad I did. Possibly, when I was in college my boyfriend and I lived in an apartment. One day, when I was home alone, two guys knock on my door. I open up and they give me some story about donating to a charity. I was dumb and said okay sure, let me get my purse. When I turn around they are inside the foyer blocking the front door. I instantly get nervous and start fumbling with my checks, to which they say they don't take checks, just cash. Then they ask if anyone else is there and I say yes, my boyfriend is sleeping. I like to think I said that convincingly enough and I said, let me go see if he has cash. I went into my bedroom to see if I had a weapon just in case, but I heard the door close and they were gone. My buddy's sister moved away from home, and within the first week of her living in her own home a man comes up to her door and asks her if he can use her phone in her house because he is lost. She didn't buy it, felt uncomfortable and said no. Few hours pass. She walks outside to multiple police cars, ambulances and fire trucks. Turns out the guy went next door and murdered her two neighbors who let him in. Not driving off immediately as the light turned green. Sure enough, a second later two cars smashed into each other, probably right where I would have been had I taken off when the light turned green. Scary seeing a head-on collision happen literally less than 10 feet in front of you. Don't know if this is a gut feeling or I just got plain lucky. Used to live in a really sketchy part of town. I decided not to go to the gym this one evening because I was super tired that day. That same evening, around the same time that I would normally walk to the gym, there was a shooting in an intersection that was part of my usual route. 2 people died. I think to myself, had I decided to go to the gym that day, 3 people may have died. So I got really lucky, ironically, by skipping gym. This is exactly why I don't ever go to the gym. Long story short, I followed a random dude off the street when I was 8 and ended up choosing the only guy in the city who would actually lead me home. Someone else on Reddit had mentioned this, but if you're a kid and are in a situation when you have to get help from an adult, it's better to directly pick someone yourself to help you, or the service people at a shop. The random person is less likely to be a predator, and people who are predators will spot you in your time of distress and approach you. I was working and had a terrible urge to go home. I am not one to ever call off or leave in the middle of a shift. I ended up saying I had a headache and my manager let me leave early. Just a few short hours later I found out my manager's ex-husband came into the store and shot her dead. Not sure if it saved my life, but I was driving once and had a gut feeling this guy pulling out of his driveway up ahead was just gonna go right ahead without looking to see if anyone was coming. I put my foot over my brake pedal and my hand on my handbrake just in case. Glad I did. I was in a compact too. Guy was in a truck. I would have been completely wrecked. Lived in Orlando for a few years. Christina Grimmie had just been shot the night before and my girlfriend wanted to go see a show downtown. We went to the show, but I had a horrible feeling afterwards. She wanted to go to Pulse after because it was on the way home, but her car was broken down that day and I had my father take us directly home because I didn't feel comfortable staying out that night. The next morning we got texts asking if we were at Pulse because a club had been shot up. We were there the week before the massacre and had missed it by mere hours on our way home that night. This is not a gut feeling, but more of a decision. I was getting a drink at a small gas station and was choosing between coffee and Gatorade. The Gatorade was on the right, and the coffee was on the left. I decided on the coffee. Right before I went to pay for it, a car drove through the wall knocking over 2 shelves, including the Gatorade and thousands of dollars of alcohol. To this day, I always look at where that hole in the wall was. I have a severe peanut allergy. Went to a restaurant and asked if their food or sauce had peanuts. They said that there wasn't any peanuts, so we ordered some of it for the day after for a gathering. I ate some of it and immediately felt bad. I thought that maybe the heat was getting to me, so I stopped eating and told my dad I wasn't feeling too well. I didn't think anything was too bad until a couple minutes later. Something just came out of nowhere and I told him I needed a hospital. 1 car ride later, I was breaking out into rashes and was throwing up. Got the treatment I needed, and I'm still here luckily. Ironically, I experienced this the day of teaching younger kids about severe food-related allergies. I was in the woods looking for critters, and I found this big piece of plywood that would have been perfect for reptiles and amphibians to hide under. So I go to lift it up, but I have this moment of what if there's something right where I'm gonna put my hands, so I grab a stick to lift it up and underneath was a copperhead. It wasn't right where I was gonna grab, so not sure if it would have been able to bite me, but definitely a good cautionary tale. Had some guys try to mug me and my friend in the middle of the night. I refused to cough up any money until they gave me a good reason. They claimed to have a gun, which they either didn't have or had not drawn. I bet on the former. When one guy said he wanted to get beer, I handed him what I had on me, 20, and my friend gave them what he had on him, a few bucks. They got in their car and drove off toward a roundabout about a half mile away, but when they started to double back, I knew something was wrong. I told my friend to run toward his house, which was really close by. I followed, and when the car turned to follow us, we were turning down another street, so I grabbed my friend and pulled him into a nearby alcove and told him to stay still and shut up. The car zipped around the turn and hauled down the street. His house was a few over and across the street, so when they turned into a cul-de-sac a little further down, we bolted to his house and got inside without issue. Dumbest shit I'd ever done, but I knew the moment they turned around that if we didn't act quickly something bad was going to happen. Went to pick up my younger sister after school and felt something strange behind my back, as if there's something that told me to turn around, and so I did and found a guy that was carrying a thick wood and was already swinging the wood towards me and my sister. I grabbed her by the hand and carried her away from that guy that was following us while laughing like crazy. We were running around the place, and while running, I decided to guide him to the police and they arrested him. Turns out he's a homeless guy who went crazy after he lost his sister before. He went crazy and would roam around town, sometimes naked and scaring kids. It also turns out it wasn't his first time doing this. He actually did this to someone else too and somehow got away with it. My gut felt weird, so I went to my doctor and ended up getting an ultrasound to check for possible gallstones. They found unrelated cancer instead. Gut feeling is probably why I'm alive right now. I could tell a man merging on the highway wasn't looking and thought it was a clear late night road. I moved in time to slightly graze his car while going 110 km/h. I was digging for crystals on a mountain in Idaho. The dig site looked like a war zone and was very far up a windy old logging road. Holes had been dug everywhere and fallen and chopped pine trees scattered all over the hillside. I was just getting into rock hounding and had no experience or knowledge. Long story short, I end up digging a large hole under a huge pine tree and got underneath its roots in a huge hole. There were lots of amazing big crystals I was finding in this huge hole cave. Dirt started falling a little from ceiling. I didn't know what that meant. I decide in that exact moment I should look at this hole I'm in under this tree because I didn't feel good about it. I walk 4 feet away from the hole and instantly the 70-foot pine tree collapses into the 6-foot hole I was just in and comes crashing down to the mountainside floor. All my tools were buried under the root mass and were recovered years later. I'm just really glad I'm not a pancake.